It begins not with a song, but with a lawsuit. A lawsuit that feels less like a piece of paper filed in some quiet courthouse and more like the first tremor of an earthquake. In January of this year, Aubrey Drake Graham, the biggest commercial force in rap, the man who has topped charts for over a decade, made a move that stunned the industry. He sued. Not Kendrick Lamar, whose track Not Like Us cut into him with surgical precision, but Universal Music Group, the very company responsible for distributing that track. Universal, the giant whose roster includes both Kendrick and Drake. On one side, an artist, bruised but unbowed. On the other, the label that has shepherded him to global superstardom. What could possibly drive Drake to sue the very institution that helped build his empire? At first glance, the answer seems simple. Ego, reputation, the need to fight back when a diss track paints you as weak, fraudulent, or worse. But peel back the legal filings and the rhetoric, and you see something far larger at stake. Drake's case does not just demand damages, it demands recognition that rap lyrics can be treated as literal statements of fact. He is asking the court to say that Kendrick's words weren't just wordplay, not just performance, not just the age-old art of battle rap, but defamation. And if that argument succeeds, the impact will not stop with Drake or Kendrick or even Universal. It could place the very language of hip-hop on trial. Universal's response was swift and brutal. In their motion to dismiss, they cut straight to the core of rap's traditions. Diss tracks, they argued, are hyperbole, they are exaggeration, braggadocious insults, larger-than-life narratives designed to entertain. No one, not artists, not fans, not anyone, takes them as literal, sworn testimony. To Universal, Drake's lawsuit was not just misguided, it was dangerous. If every insult in every song could be litigated, then battle rap would collapse. Labels, streaming services, even YouTube itself might find themselves liable for hosting tracks that went too far. The culture of rap, raw, competitive, and unfiltered, would suffocate under legal scrutiny. But Drake pressed forward. His complaint was amended, sharpened, revised. His lawyers dug deeper, discovery requests flew like arrows, and soon they landed on one of the most powerful men in music. Lucian Grange, CEO of Universal. Drake's legal team demanded access to Grange's phone. Every message, every thread of communication that might reveal what Universal knew, what deals were made, how Not Like Us was distributed and promoted. Universal resisted. They called it invasive, unreasonable, an assault on privacy. But beneath the legalese was something more dramatic. This was no longer about a single artist's wounded pride. It was a battle over power itself. The fight spilled into stranger, more costly terrain. A key witness, Kojo Asamoah, allegedly knew details about how streaming numbers were boosted, how perception was shaped, how hits were engineered. Serving him a subpoena should have been routine. It wasn't. 11 attempts failed. A private investigator chased shadows, addresses, dead ends. $75,000 vanished in the process, nearly 6 figures just to deliver one piece of paper. Drake's legal bills ballooned, hemorrhaging money at a pace even a superstar could feel. His team begged the court for alternative service, permission to mail the papers, take them to a door, anything to move forward. The judge agreed. But the message was clear. This was not going to be a quick or cheap war. And yet, for all the procedural drama, the real explosion came not from either party, but from outside the case altogether. Onto the judge's desk landed an amicus brief, a letter from scholars, experts in criminology, intellectual property, and freedom of expression. They weren't siding with Drake or Universal, they were sounding an alarm. Treating rap lyrics as literal, they wrote, is not only wrong, it is dangerous. They laid out the argument with chilling precision. In criminal courts across America, prosecutors had already tried to use lyrics as evidence of guilt. insisting that bars and rhymes were admissions of real crimes. The practice, they warned, fueled racial bias, casting young black men as dangerous simply because of the personas they performed on wax. Rap, they reminded the court, is art. It is theater. Artists create characters, stage names, alternate realities. Marshall Mathers becomes Eminem. Jeffrey Williams becomes Young Thug. Personas are crafted, exaggerated, distorted. They are not literal. To mistake them for fact is to criminalize imagination. They reminded the court of Curtis Jackson, 50 Cent, who once wrote about getting high all the time, only to later admit he didn't drink or use drugs at all. He said it plainly. He wrote what would sell. He gave audiences what they expected, not what he lived. Rap, these scholars argued, thrives on braggadocio, on competitive exaggeration, on lyrical duels where creativity matters more than truth. Diss tracks aren't court depositions, they are verbal sparring matches, brutal, funny, shocking, and entertaining, designed to hit below the belt, but never meant to be sworn testimony. And then Drake's case hangs on the opposite assumption, that every line in Not Like Us is literal, that Kendrick's insults are not exaggeration, but defamation. If a judge agrees, the ripple effect could be catastrophic. Labels and distributors would face a choice: censor diss tracks or risk being sued. Streaming platforms might scrub songs for fear of liability. Artists might self-censor, trimming their words, dulling their edge. The chilling effect would not just touch Drake and Kendrick, it would touch every rapper, every battle, every raw, unfiltered verse that has ever defined the culture. Imagine a world where Jay-Z's early battles, DMX's raw freestyles, Eminem's venomous tirades would all be exhibits and lawsuits. Imagine Lil' Kim or Foxy Brown dragged into court for every violent boast they ever recorded. Imagine the history of battle rap itself, rooted in African American oral traditions of competitive wordplay, suddenly silenced under legal threat. That is the world Drake's lawsuit flirts with creating. But there's another side, one Drake himself points to. He argues that Not Like Us wasn't just another diss track consumed by hip-hop heads who understand the rules of the game. It was everywhere. Played at the Super Bowl, blasted across mainstream media, reaching audiences far outside the culture. People who didn't know the context, people who didn't know the difference between lyrical hyperbole and factual claims. To them, Drake argues, the song wasn't art, it was character assassination. And for a man whose empire rests on his reputation, the damage was real. This is the paradox at the heart of the case. On one side, the need to protect art, exaggeration, the tradition of lyrical combat. On the other, the reality that words have power and that when broadcast to the world, they can reshape a reputation forever. And so the court must decide, where does art end and defamation begin? For Drake, the cost is immense. Millions already poured into lawyers, investigators, motions, discovery battles. For Universal, the risk is existential. If they lose, they and every other distributor could be held accountable for the words of their artists. And for the culture, the stakes are even higher. If rap lyrics can no longer be shielded as hyperbolic art, then the very foundation of hip-hop, its battles, its boasts, its raw, unfiltered truth through fiction could be dismantled piece by piece. This is not just a fight between Drake and Kendrick, not just Drake and Universal. It is a fight over whether rap as we know it can survive the courtroom. And so as motions fly, as judges weigh arguments, as subpoenas chase elusive witnesses, one question looms over everything. What happens if Drake wins? Does hip-hop lose?